feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you late afternoon on Tuesday. It's December 17th. And the plan for today's show is a little bit different. We got kind of some time off between games. So I thought it would be cool to spend an episode talking about what this team is like off the floor. Whether that be our perception from covering the team, but also we talked to some of the players and coaches at practice day. So I have some clips there. I've got Wolves beat writer Chris Hine from the Star Tribune here with me, which I must say is kind of great producing by me, kind of perfect. No one spends more time.
The right guest. Yes,
I did. I did. Yeah. Thanks for doing this on the Tuesday afternoon.
No problem. Thanks for having me. And I want to debut my new mug. I mean, you usually see me with a La Croix or a Starbucks cup. But today we've got my Mariah Carey cassette mug.
That's actually kind of cool.
Of all the cassette covers of a bunch of her albums that the Instagram algorithm spouted out at me one day and got me to immediately buy in about 30 seconds.
Those are dangerous.
So it really was. They knew what they were doing with that one. I'll say that.
Yeah, this is going to be a good episode to watch on YouTube. I have a clip of Chris Finch getting all of us kind of getting hit by a ball in the middle of our media interview with him.
Yeah.
As always, you can watch the show on YouTube, or if you're a podcaster, that's fine as well. Also, if you're on YouTube right now, you can see the story that Chris wrote. What was this? Was this Sunday? It came out Friday. Really like it, yeah. And I think it really fits what we're talking about here. There's a lot of talk, right, Chris, when the Randall and Gobert kind of kerfuffle went down in Toronto about players only meeting. What happened there? How did they handle that sort of collision of personalities? And I really like the angle that you took. I mean, you uncovered which is probably maybe just a thing in today's NBA more so than what we think of historically, that they worked it out in a players only group chat. And I love that angle. I heard you kind of asking some people about it when we were in San Francisco last week for the Warriors game, but what made you kind of pursue this? What made you think of, okay, this is the thing I want to write here?
I don't know. It just kind of stuck in my mind. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago when the Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert fight happened in the huddle. And I remember Mike Conley had a quote after the game or something like that, like where he said like Rudy already messaged like the team group chat or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I don't know that for some reason after the Julius Rudy thing happened, that quote kind of came back in my mind. And I was like, I wonder if some of this is getting hashed out. Obviously it gets hashed out in person, right? There's a heavy dose of that, but I wonder how much of this stuff gets hashed out in the group chat. Right. And so I just kind of had this idea and I figured I'd ask some of the guys about it. I had no idea if it was going to be true, if it was going to be, not true. Am I overblowing it or not? And I don't think it was being overblown. I think the group chat, and especially to hear Dante DiVincenzo talk about it, I think really did play a big role in how they overcame this early season funk. It actually does play a role in everyday NBA life, I think in a larger way than most people realize, because when guys are at home, they see each other at the facility, but then they're, with their families or with their people, whatever, when they're away. When they're on the road, yes, they're on the planes together, but, they're in hotel rooms or working out, they're in separate rooms. So the group chat plays a big function in the kind of the social cohesion of an NBA team, and specifically the players only group chat, which doesn't have any other coaches or staff members or anything like that. An NBA team has many group chats, to be clear. Like you have group chats with staff members, coaches, there's an all team one where, you get like practice updates and stuff like that. There's many group chats associated with being a part of an NBA team, but the players only one specifically is kind of where, as DiVincenzo said, it's almost like a safe space. It's a continuation of a quote unquote, can be a continuation of a quote unquote players only meeting at times, right? And in some ways, it's even more secure than a players only meeting, right? Because, you know, take for instance what happened in Philadelphia, where like details of the meeting got leaked, right?
Sure.
If something gets leaked from the group chat, you know, they have nobody to blame but themselves
Right.
in the group chat, right? So
Had to be one of us.
It had to be one of us.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It wasn't anybody overhearing a conversation or anything like that. So, you know, there's a security and a safety in that, where guys can speak their minds freely without fear of it getting out, without fear, and you can take the time to absorb a message, compose your thoughts, reply when you're ready, instead of having like an instantaneous, visceral, off the cuff reaction, which maybe you regret later. So that's kind of how the Wolves used it, I think, in that way over these last couple of weeks.
It's one of those things where you're reminded how normal these people are, you know, that they're just like we all got our like friend group chats. You got your family group message where it's like, happy birthday to this person, you know, or whatever.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
like,
yes.
Like they got the same stuff. And that just reminded me. You remember, actually, this is probably the first time I ever heard about, you know, the team group chat. Remember when there was at the trade deadline, the first Rosas year, where like eight guys got traded? Do you remember that? They were, I don't know if you wrote a story about it, but we were in the locker room.
I asked Nas Reed about that, because I specifically asked about that. I said, Nas, do you remember that year everybody got traded?
Right.
And Nas couldn't quite remember like if they even had a group chat then. So that kind of,
no, they did. I remember
because I remember exactly what you're saying. It's like, I feel like somebody referenced that in the locker room during that time, like, oh yeah, everybody's messaging the group chat saying goodbye, like,
right. It was just like putting up the piece, you know, like and then they just leave the group chat. Well, you actually wrote about that some at the end of this, which for everybody like listening to this right now, like pause this, go read it. It's gonna take you 10 minutes. It's really I mean, it's clearly far and away the best piece of like reporting this season on what this team is like off the floor. It's not the normal stuff you write about or we talk about on here. It's it was really good, but it was
the
interesting.
Nikhil quote about that.
Share it if you don't mind.
So I'll share that one. So yeah, I kind of asked a bunch of the guys who have switched teams, like Kyle Anderson switching to Golden State, and I said, Nikhil, when you got traded from Utah to Minnesota, you know, I said, what did you say to the group chat? I said, how is it? Do you say like a long goodbye? Do you just leave it? Do you just dip out? And Nikhil's quote was, I didn't build any connections strong enough to warrant a whole deep message. My role wasn't that intuitive on the team. So he basically just left. He just left no message, just Nikhil. Literally, like Nikhil has left the group chat. Yeah, that's essentially what it was. And Kyle Anderson, same thing. He's like, no sentiments, no nothing. Left the group chat. Deleted.
But his wasn't because he was angry.
His wasn't because he was angry at anybody. He was. That's just how he rolls, right?
Right.
He's like got a new team, new energy towards them. Nothing, you know, moving on, right? And Kyle Anderson was a favorite in the Wolves locker room
for sure.
But that's just kind of how he handles all of his various group chats over the years. Delete, moving on.
Yeah, it was I was there when you were talking to Mike Conley about it in San Francisco, and I was like, be honest, Mike, like, do you have the group message muted? And he was like, yes. He was like, I do. I do.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, right? Like, or even just the ways, because, you know, there's other communication going on as we all do in our life too. It's like, okay, maybe I'm a one-off this person outside of the outside of the group, and I think it's a huge part of. And obviously it is, right? It's 2024. Like, it's a huge part of how
we communicate.
It is. And I thought it was like a resounding, it really helped us get through that Toronto thing in the beginning of this year, which, like, they were all kind of, the timing of this was nice because they kind of gotten back on a roll and sort of stabilized post the Toronto mess. And And they were like, that was kind of a turning point for us, like in the season, was having that players only meeting in the group chat and the conversations they did have in person as well and as a team. But it shows something about this team that does want to overcome. I think there are other groups that, you run into some of those personality collisions and then you kind of coast for the rest of the season. You know what I mean? And it was interesting just kind of talking to the players over the course of this time of when it was rough earlier in the season. And they were like, everybody still wants to win and believes that we can win here now. So it's going to be counterproductive for anybody to be holding any grudges and to get on to, whatever. Like they had to come back together because they want to win. And I know everybody wants to win, but there are different levels of it. When you're a team like the Wolves are that internally believe that they can contend, they're like, okay, we got to take care of this shit. Like we got to get back on normal. And at least the last, I don't know, almost month. It's probably been a month since Toronto.
Yeah, right? About a month. Yeah, it's been about a month. Yeah.
Obviously the best month of the season. I mean, they really made us shift. I think everybody shift like, okay, maybe this team does have some juice to it. Maybe they can get back to, what we thought they would be.
Well, I think I made this point on your podcast, but having moments like that early in the season, as much as it seems like the sky is falling from a fan perspective, right? Having moments like that at game 20 of an 82 game season is not necessarily the worst thing to happen in the course of a season. And here's the thing you learn about covering the NBA. And I know, again, fan bases react very, very emotionally to every game. But when you cover the league and you've been in the league as a player or a coach, you know that every team has these kind of moments, no matter how good or how bad they are, right? Even the best teams go through moments where they're not playing well and things aren't going well, right? So you have to be able to hash it out. Guys have been through this before. They weren't panicking. Yes, they have to figure some things out. And yes, there was a sense of urgency, especially when you hear Anthony Edwards say what he did right before Thanksgiving. But it coming at game 20 when you have 60 more games to try to figure things out is not the worst thing in the arc of a season to have happen.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah. I think that's something you got to keep in mind when you talk about the big picture of an NBA team and how an NBA season just works. This was mid to late November. The playoffs are in April. They're 5 months away. That is a long time. You have time to figure stuff out. And that's what they were doing over the last couple of weeks. And, the offense obviously isn't great right now, but man, the defense sure is. Right. And so at least they have that to hang their hats on while they figure things out offensively. And now they seem to be in a better place as a group in a place where they seem to be communicating in a way that Ant was calling for, in a way that Mike Conley was calling for after that Sacramento game.
I think it's a great point to highlight that almost every team has this during the season. I'm just thinking back to, both of us haven't done this and covered this team in particular for a while. You kind of, you get together with people or whatever, and you hear about something like 3-4 years prior about the Wolves or like some sort of beef that happened, right? That we never got any wind of at the time. But it happened, and then whatever, those groups work their ways through it too. But it is extremely common that these sort of things happen. Unfortunately for the Wolves and Rudy Gobert, the Kyle Anderson one happened on camera in a game, and so did the Julius Randle one, and it just kind of, obviously it highlights it more in that way. But yeah, I'm sure particularly the vets on this team, I think Mike even kind of like hinted at this too when we were asking him about it, is like, yeah, I've seen this stuff happen a lot in my career. I would assume most teams have some sort of collision with this, over the course of an 82 game season.
No, I do think, I do think it was a defining moment where I think it could have gone a bad way for sure, and maybe sets the tone for the rest of the season. But it feels like that was a bit of a fork in the road moment for this team. and they got it together, right?
did.
And I think that's a credit to the personalities on this team, and to the new guys for making it work as well on that end of the floor, or on the defensive end of the floor. So I think it's, it was a moment where they needed some urgency and a little kick in the behind, and they got it. They seem to have righted the ship, and I think now, and we even saw it after the game they lost in Golden State. It was like, we lost tonight, but we know what we did wrong. We know this wasn't us. We know what we have to do better. Whereas before, they were kind of searching for answers, right?
Yeah, Portland was like, we don't know.
Yeah. We don't know, right? Portland, and then losing the lead late to the Kings, things like that. Like that Golden State loss was the quote unquote least dramatic loss of the season. It felt like it, at least. It's like, yeah, we just screwed it up tonight. We know what we need to do, and we'll fix it. So yeah, it's it's communication, and this is how 20 somethings communicate in the year 2024. It just is. It absolutely is.
And now, and like, let's not crown them for this. Like, you gotta, like, it's important that they grew from that it was like scar tissue, right? So that they don't, when something happens again, that they don't splinter again, right? Like, that's going to be the test, is if and when there's another personality collision on the court, off the court, in practice, in the locker room, whatever, that you can, like, can you stay solid? What happened is they separated, came back together, and they're good right now. And that shows something, but there are still 8 games or whatever left in the season too. So it's like more tests to come. Again, check this out at the you just go to StarTribune.com, or it's on. Yeah,
quick note too. I say this all the time on the podcast. That story does not happen without being on the road, without subscriptions funding the travel budget, all that stuff. That you get that kind of story because I'm able to travel. Yep. Like, that is a direct correlation. That story probably doesn't happen if I'm not on the road reporting it out.
That is factually correct, and a good segue into paying some more bills. Today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino, and on December 29th, Treasure Island is doing a free live watch party in the Parlay Lounge for the Week 17 Vikings-Packers game. It's a noon game. I think we figured out it isn't getting flex. So the party starts at 11 a.m., an hour before kickoff. It'll be hosted by Crisco and Wes from the KS95 morning show. There'll be free food in the Parlay Lounge, team-specific cocktails. Just a fun place to kind of watch that border battle go down. There's a ton of stuff going on at Treasure Island at the end of December, as Treasure Island is celebrating their 40th anniversary, the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st. They have events going on every day and night there. There's a Pop Rocks show on the 28th, and an 80s themed New Year's Eve party on the Island Event Center on New Year's Eve. So if you got the family in town, you're looking for something to do that kind of week between Christmas and New Year's, consider going down to Treasure Island. For a full list of Treasure Island's promotions, visit TICasino.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and I looked up a couple quick ones for tonight's NBA Cup Championship. There's a free Nikola Jokic square up there, so if you are a Prize Picks player, you can play that for up to a $20 lineup. So I was just like, okay, how do I maximize this $20? If you take the Jokic free square, if he scores 1 point on Christmas Day, and then if AJ Green, who's playing tonight in the championship, scores more than 2.5 points, and if Taurean Prince scores more than 1.5 points, your $20 will lead to a $50 win there. I feel pretty good about it. It's a good opportunity to take advantage of some promotions there. I also think it's gonna be interesting to watch the Bucks play the Thunder. Maybe they go a little less big, a little less Brook Lopez. I think we see a lot of Taurean Prince and AJ Green in that game. I love the idea of AJ Green having more than 2.5 points and Taurean Prince having more than 1.5 points in that game. If you'd like to create a lineup, hopefully you can get to this before that game tips off this evening, but just in general, check out that, use that Jokic free square when you're creating any lineup over this, I guess, week until Christmas comes. That's PrizePicks.com, PrizePicks app. Promo code Dane gets you a $50 bonus as well when you make your first $5 lineup. Okay, Chris, sort of staying on theme from the group chat thing, I wanted to talk to you about how this team is similar or different than the team a season ago. I got a clip, from Finch on that, but I'm curious. Again, you're on the team, or probably the two of us are around the team as much as anybody who is not a Timberwolves employee. What have you seen? What have you gathered? What ways do you see this team to be different than a season ago, or maybe not?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think it's just more stylistically than anything. I think that's the biggest difference for me. I don't sense a ton of like off-court differences, because I think, the main guys in the locker room have generally stayed the main guys, despite Cat not being there anymore. But it's just stylistically, I mean, the way they play defense, how they have to use Julius on both ends of the floor versus how they use Cat is the biggest difference to me. I think off the court, the biggest difference that's happened is Ant has taken on a more vocal leadership. Kyle Anderson isn't there anymore to be a voice in the locker room. And I do think people appreciated his leadership. Mm-hmm. And there was maybe a little bit of a vacuum of that around some of the things that Ant was saying that night against the Kings. Sure. So I think maybe off the court, as I'm talking through it here, that is one of the biggest differences, is not having the Kyle Anderson voice of it. Because Cat wasn't always like a leader, like vocal, rah, mm-hmm. Rally the troops, call somebody's stuff out when it stank kind of guy, right?
He was like a come in leader. Like
Cat was more of a connective.
Yes.
Like I want to be friendly with everybody. I want to be a good energy. Like mm-hmm. that was Cat, right? That was, and that is a form of leadership in and of itself, right?
But not the traditional like head of the snake. You listen to this guy. They say and what they say mm-hmm. sort of goes. And it's an interesting mm-hmm. thing, like about I think last year's team. Is I don't think they really had that point person, like really because there was some spread in between Ant, Rudy, and Cat, and they are all such different personalities,
right,
and different ages, that it was a shared sort of thing that I think ultimately ended up falling on Mike Conley, was.
Yes,
the leader of the group, shared with Kyle Anderson some too, but more of a group leadership dynamic was the sense that I got.
Yes, no, I think Kyle had a big voice in it. Mike is the ultimate vet in the room and the voice of reason and many other things, right? that is the role he plays. Yeah. So that hasn't changed, right? Like that sort of stuff hasn't changed. And we saw Mike be also, Ant's comments got the headlines that night out of Sacramento, but Mike's comments were pretty forceful too.
Yeah.
Like in a way that we haven't really heard Mike talk a lot in his tenure. He was very blunt and echoing a lot of what Ant was saying as well. Mm-hmm. And he was the one, as he said, that was kind of stirring the pot at halftime of that game. That's like, guys, we got to be able to talk to each other. We can't be doing this. We got to be able to say what's on our minds. He was the one that was kind of stirring the pot there. And that has been a bit of who he has been. So some things are similar from last year. Some things are different. Missing Kyle's voice, missing the Cat energy. But I don't think, as much as people like to read into the body language or whatever of Julius Randle, I'm not getting the sense that is how the team is viewing Julius Randle's presence on the team, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't actually. Finch, I asked Finch about this.
Finch did reference this today. Yeah. Yes, yeah.
I got that clip. So here's what Finch said. We talked so much about like differences of this somewhat new group on the floor. Yeah. With the changes you made, 25 in or whatever. What's it kind of been like? How's this group like off the floor?
Yeah. They like each other. they have all a very similar personality in a lot of ways. And sometimes that's a good thing because it allows them to kind of easily flow with each other. But sometimes you need somebody who's going to rattle the group a little bit too. Like, I think it's one place where, like, Kyle was really good at that, But we've found guys who are just, learning to kind of step outside their comfort zone to do that now. But yeah, it's been a great group, but really has been highly coachable, go about their work, very businesslike.
Has Ant been one of those guys?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Ant's definitely taken that challenge and done it very, very well. Even like Julius has been great. Like as a new guy, like being vocal at the right times. And I know that's probably not his nature, but knowing that he sees what the team kind of needs.
That's interesting, there, right? Like
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and seems honest from Finch. It's not really Julius's nature. Ant is kind of growing with it over the time of the season. I don't know if you I remember the trade happens and we start thinking about Randall and DiVincenzo for Cat and he's saying the basketball reasons and we're all like, oh, second apron and money and all this and and I remember right kind of before media day where I was putting together questions I wanted to ask at media day. And one thing kind of popped to me was leader, and Ant, and having covered him for the first, 4 years of his career, it was I knew he didn't have that head of the snake leadership role. Right. And it kind of struck me that, he was going to have that. Right. And I asked him about it at media day and he was like, my head isn't even there yet. I don't think, understandably, that his friend gets traded, all this other different stuff is happening. And I think he's kind of had to come to grips or understanding with being more of the head of the snake from a leadership standpoint, kind of highlighted by what he said the day before Thanksgiving, calling the team out, and then has a little bit of proof of concept here and look what the team has done since then. It is very important, I think, that Ant understands, takes on, and is effective in a leadership role for this team to be what it can be.
Shameless book promotion here. One of the chapters is called Head of the Snake.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so thank you for the synergy here. And the chapter that deals with Ant's growing voice of leadership, which is essentially talking about last season, is that chapter. And it is how Ant, without giving the spoilers away, it is how Ant's voice developed throughout the course of last season, how he felt more comfortable. And it culminated in an important moment where he used his voice to speak up when the team needed it. And you could read all about it in the book when it comes out. We're teasing it. So that is something that has emerged and is emerging over the last season. It was something he's always been reluctant to embrace through his first 3 years here, but it really started last season. It started because Mike was kind of, I guess you could say, kind of helping him up on the pedestal, so to speak, right? And Finch to a certain degree as well. Finch said something for the book where he was like, Ant would say things to me if he and Ant were talking about the team and what the team needs, he's like, Ant would say things to me and I would say to Ant, well, you should tell that to the team in our meetings and I will have your back. Sure. Right. So there were these
maybe that's what Ant needed is
right. So it was,
I'll say it, but you got to be there with me.
Right. So that's what I mean. It's kind of helping him up on that pedestal and kind of guiding him to this, right? It doesn't happen overnight, right? It takes mentorship and guidance from those around him. And that's where Ant was the first 3-4 years of his career to now where it's more and more of his own voice and not necessarily, needing to have somebody sort of hold his hand, so to speak. And that's where he's at in year 5 right now from that end of things.
I took just in general, leadership, basketball wise, whatever. I took the final 20 games of the season last year from Ant after Carl got hurt and missed the end of it to be a real blessing in disguise for him in his elevation.
Well,
Like,
honestly, both years Carl got hurt. There was
right.
blessings in disguise for Ant and his growth. 100%.
Yeah, and because Ant was never like thirsty to be the head of the, as you're saying, like, which I think some guys do. You want to come in and like, this is my team, whatever. Like Ant kind of seemed to enjoy the role that he had. Was the sense I got of like, okay, Carl's been here forever. Rudy and Mike are the vets. Kyle's even here, and and he's and he's helpful in that way. But I mean, to me, in my head, when I think about when Anthony Edwards, to me, turned into a player I believed was really going to become a superstar, was the game in Indiana where it ends and he hits his head on the rim with the block when he blocks Aaron Nesmith there. And that was the first game that Cat missed of the 20 he missed at the end of the season. And Ant jumped on that opportunity to be like, no, we're not dead just because Carl's hurt. He's coming back, but we're going to still like get our positioning in the in the playoff race here. And then I felt like that kind of propelled him into the playoffs with that's why he was able to be so special as, the head of the snake, at least on the basketball court in the Phoenix series. And then what he was able to do throughout the playoffs. It's been an interesting, as again, documented in the book. It's an interesting story of Ant's sort of progression here, given how the leadership pieces around him have evolved in his career.
Yep, it was everybody kind of recognizing that Ant, as the best player, is going to have to be that guy eventually, right? Mm-hmm. That's just how it is in the NBA, right? You're only young for so long, and you can only use that crutch that you're young for so long. But at some point, you are going to be the best player, and you have to develop a leadership voice and a style. And Ant has always led with his energy, with his positivity, right? Mm-hmm. And he is not afraid to be candid with teammates at the same time.
Sure.
And I think that aspect and being kind of the guy that rallies the troops is something he has always been reluctant to embrace, but is embracing more now.
Yeah. Well, let's. I want to start talking about Cat coming to town. So let me grab our second ad break here a little bit early because I don't want to chop that up too much. Today's show is also brought to you by Doer Jeans. You've heard me talking about Doer for a while. They're the most comfortable pants and clothes that I own because they're that style of clothes that you can look to wear formally, yet they have kind of the comfort of the clothes you might wear at home when you're just kind of hanging out on the couch. I've really come to love these. They're my my go-tos for going out to dinner or going to cover a game. They're made sustainably as well. I don't talk about that as much. They are developed from recycled materials and plant-based fibers for that kind of natural breathability, softness, and also moisture absorption. If you're looking for a last-minute Christmas gift for somebody in your life, I really would recommend Doer's clothes. Are honestly one just for yourself. Try a pair. And see if you are in agreement with what I'm talking about. I think you're going to love them as much as I do. You can check out Doer's flagship stores in LA or Denver. But for those of you in Minnesota, you can shop online at shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. If you use that URL, my listeners get 20% off their first purchase. When you use that exclusive URL, shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. Seriously, this is a great deal. 20% off some high quality clothing. Don't wait to get that 20% off. Go now to shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. All right, Chris, Cat is coming to town. It was interesting today. I'll let you kind of choose which angle you want to take here first. We talked to Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley about their experiences of going back to play at Utah for the first time, or in Mike's case, going back to play in Memphis for the first time. I thought that was interesting, and then just kind of interesting to hear them reflect on what Cat did mean, to the team, which we'd heard a bunch of times around the trade. But I really do think they all had such a genuinely positive relationship with Carl, and it wasn't one of those like we're all accommodating each other because we're stars sort of vibe. It was Carl is a pleaser, you know, and an accommodator. Rudy being a great example of that. What stood out to you when we were talking to Conley and Finch and Gobert today?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think you hit the nail on the head of how people view and appreciate Cat, you know, outside of what you see of him and clips on social media and whatnot. And, you know, I think what people really appreciate about Carl is that at his core, he's always been a good guy who's always wanted to see others succeed, who's always wanted to be a good teammate, who's, you know, and I think when you can sense somebody is authentic in that way, or at least is genuine in that part of their personality, you can put up with whatever else, right?
Sure.
You know, you can put up with things he says in the media or whatever, right? It's like, oh, that's just Carl being Carl, right? You know. But at the end of the day, if you sense that they're a good person and they're out there to help you, which I think guys like Rudy and Ant always did, you can roll with that. You can roll with that person, right?
I remember, I don't know what year it was, but I remember like at one point we're interviewing Cat, maybe it was Cat and Rudy at the same time, and they're standing by each other, and Rudy kind of did the thing of like, yeah, tell him to get his ass in the corner sometimes.
Yeah.
You remember that? Like, and it was like that kind of like ribbing that you would give to your friend,
right?
You wouldn't give to the like other star that you're like behind the scenes kind of like butting heads with,
and same with Ant, like Ant in the playoffs last year, like stop effing fouling, Cat, you know, like right, you know, like he like they had that sort of relationship with him that was genuine, right? And I think you saw that, and you know, I think again in the book, I think you'll see that Ant and Cat were closer than maybe people realized, and that, you know, their relationship was a really good one. And yeah, it was that's Carl. Carl, like you said, he's the ultimate pleaser, maybe too much at times, right? But that ain't a bad thing,
right?
Know?
Yeah, better
if
than
if that's the worst thing about your personality, then you're doing a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was this clip here about Rudy kind of reflecting on Cat accommodating him when he came in here. But when I was cutting it, I was thinking about, like, obviously that first Gobert year was rough. And there was internally in the locker room, there was stuff, you know, going on, and Rudy, not between Rudy and Carl. My point is I think, like, I wonder where Rudy would have been at when it was rough in the early stages had Carl not been playing the role of accommodator and kind and welcoming to him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
To the point where here we are, you know, a few years later, and Rudy signs an extension for a discount, you know, to stay with the Wolves. And I remember that night when that was opening night, right? Like we're with the Lake in LA for the against the Lakers, and you know that deal comes through, and you see the number, and I'm like, dude, I would have never thought in a million years that would have happened if you had asked me about it the first Gobert season. You know, and it's well, I mean, it's not just a testament to Cat, but it's a testament to, like, you know, kind of putting this together, connecting the pieces that needed to be connected around Gobert to make him fit. Because the reality of the situation was they traded for Gobert, they gave up everything for him, and like he was going to have to fit by hell, or they were committed to him, you know. And I think just without Carl's accommodation, there would have been it would have been a lot messier, and even today would be a lot messier than it is. Here's Rudy talking about Cat in those early days.
Carl greeting you here and then making the accommodation to be switching positions and, you know, kind of doing everything he could to make that work.
It's been amazing. You know, always from day one, like, you know, always told me like whatever I need, you know, he was always there for me, and then really made it fun, you know, for me to get here in a new organization. You know, we started really connecting really well outside of the floor also. And yeah, I felt like he really truly wanted to see me happy and see me succeed, you know, and obviously that carries over to the team, right? When your teammates want to see you succeed, you know, you can fit in the locker room, you can fit in on the floor. So that's really what I felt, you know, from day one. And even, you know, we went through some adversity, we went through some growing pains as a team. You know, the fact that we cared about one another as persons, I think that's what allowed us to come back and be even better the next year. And we did what we did.
I thought it was in that clip too, but they talk about like playing Call of Duty, and right. Carl and Rudy were both really into anime and connected over that, and Rudy referenced like business ventures that they've, you know, that they talked about together. Like it's cool to see how much those two became friends in their brief time together, when they were like adversaries, you know. Before that, the Rudy beats him out for all NBA the couple seasons before, cost Carl like $38 million or whatever. Yep. And you know, Carl's probably like, Rudy Gobert not better than me. Like,
I wonder how much that came up at dinner on the road. Like, hey, Rudy, you're picking up the tab because you got the extra $38 million. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, Rudy's probably like, because I play defense, Carl. It was just cool today, I thought, to kind of sort of reflect on the, you know, on the Carl time and what it meant off the court, but also on the court. And this team's certainly missing Carl in ways off the floor too. I know you were kind of, I'm assuming you're working on something there too, because you were asking Finch and the players about that as well.
I don't think I'm going to write so much about the on the court shit.
The sacrifice part is what I was. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm referring to too. It's like, I think just when we talk about positions in basketball, right? We've seen before that sometimes when you try to take a 3 and put them at a 4, sure, it doesn't always work. When you try to take a shooting guard and make him play point guard a little bit, it doesn't always work. So Carl being able to shift from center to the 4, like, and then ultimately making it work, I think is a very underappreciated and undervalued thing that he did, and that he made it work so successfully. I don't think that's as easy as people may think. Is kind of my point, and what was my point in asking those questions? You're asking him to switch positions, switch roles. He sacrificed a little bit in terms of his numbers, right? Like, he's leading the league in rebounding now that he's a center again, right? He wasn't even getting 10 a game because he's next to Rudy, and Rudy's leading the team in rebounding. But Carl was, and that affects things like all-star appearances and things like that. And I really think when Carl made the all-star team last year, it was a little bit of a recognition on behalf of the league that, okay, Carl has sacrificed a little bit. He was having a really efficient season, and that helped him get the All-Star berth last year. But I do think the All-Star berth was, and I think he was grateful for it, because it was recognition that he was sacrificing to help the team win. And whoever the coaches voted for that and recognized that in his game.
No, that's a really good. I hadn't even thought of the All-Star thing, because I'll play this clip from Finch where the ball interrupts us in the middle of the question.
Yes,
but Finch, in all seriousness, references internally how underrated Carl's sacrifice was, and that is the All-Star appearance is probably the one real external recognition that Carl did get in the time with Rudy, of the sacrifice that, you know, that he did make to kind of make the whole thing work. So I will play that clip from Finch on Cat Sacrifice.
When Carl was here, how underrated?
So many years ago.
How underrated was maybe the sacrifice he was willing to make?
I mean, internally,
you talked about
internally not underrated at all. You know, I think. You know, from the very moment that we brought in Rudy, like coming off of an All-NBA year, I mean, it started there. So,
that was a direct hit.
that was the basketball.
Never seen that happen before. Took out my recorder.
Yeah, I gotta bring out the other recorder. You gotta jump.
Kareem has one job and he can't might explain the 3-on-3. Might explain the 3-on-3 performances, you know. So. Yeah, it was massive. Like, you know, just accommodating Rudy just from a general sense. Then having to change his game along the way, you know, and then he never fought it. There were things that we had to learn. Obviously, we're hijacked by 50-game absence, you know, at the end of that first year together. But coming back for the playoffs in the Denver series, I thought at that point we were really able to put our finger on some stuff that finally worked. And a lot of it had to do with, you know, Cat making the sacrifices around it to actually make it work. So, yeah, I mean, forever grateful for that. And, you know, not many, again, players of his caliber are going to do it with the willingness that he did and the effectiveness of it.
Chris, it's interesting. It's thinking on the fly here a little bit. Like it's interesting to think about. So Finch says, like, we basically figured out the Carl stuff in the playoffs last year. It took that long to figure out.
I think he was referencing 2 years ago, the first Denver series.
Oh,
I think that's what he was. I think that's what he was referencing. Like, they started figuring stuff out 2 years ago, maybe. I don't know. What do you? That's what I took it as.
Yeah, no, that might be it. That might be it.
Yeah.
I mean, the second Denver series was when they figured it out enough to win. Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's an interesting. What if Carl never gets hurt? Is an interesting what if in this whole thing. Like, if Carl never gets hurt, because he got hurt both years for significant periods of time, it doesn't change the contract. It doesn't change the financial motivations that, you know, they had to make that the trade that they ultimately deemed, you know, to be the best decision for them. But, you know, what if he doesn't get hurt, and what if it all clicks together earlier, sooner, and you know, and what if they're better quicker? Like, I do think they would have gotten better quicker had Carl not gotten hurt, you know? And so now if Finch is saying we started figuring it out, or I mean, on the court, they just did, like, started winning at the end, like at a really high level, going to Western Conference Finals at the end of the second year. I wonder if they would have hit that level of synergy, you know, 8 months earlier or whatever, how that, you know, what's the butterfly effect of that? And, you know, that's stuff we could go up and down with the butterfly effect in all sports. But that one is an interesting one, because, like, if they wanted to, they could have kept this together for this season and paid for it down the line, right? Financially and breaking up the team. But would have that been enough to warrant keeping together for another year? I don't know.
I don't know. Whatever. It's like you said, we could play that game all day, right? Yeah. If 2 years ago he doesn't get hurt, what does it mean for Ant and his development?
Sure, that's the other one. Yeah.
I'm guessing they probably still make the move for Mike Conley at that point. You know, I'm guessing that still happens probably. But yeah, what does that look like if Mike, you know, comes in at the deadline and has more than like 3 games before they have to go to the playoffs, where he's playing with Carl and Ant and Rudy and they had like whatever it was, like I forget how many games they had that year.
This is what movies is made of. Was
I know when was that game?
79 or 8 or something like that.
Was it? Yeah, I think
it was pretty late. I think
was it late? Yeah. So that's what I mean. It's like what does it all look like? We don't know, but we had a glimpse of it last year, you know, and it really felt like they found a groove, and it's in part because Carl made it work. Because Carl was willing to make the necessary changes and adjustments, how he defended, you know, taking a cut in his points and in his rebounds, and still being efficient, not complaining about it, doing what he could to contribute to winning. And then when the team, you know, and listen, he's had his playoff struggles, and he certainly struggled in the Western Conference Finals, but when the team had very little else going for it offensively in Game 7 against Denver, Carl got them through that first half and kept them within striking range. And it wasn't a worse deficit in that first half because Carl was playing well that day. So
that's a good point.
That's he leaves a very strong legacy based off of last season in my mind, for sure.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And then in the front office, as they did the first season when Tim Conley was hired, viewed that Pat Bev and Vando team as a team that had some sort of glass ceiling, so they go out and make the Gobert trade to try to go for a higher ceiling. And then I think the same thing happened with the Cat trade, though the glass ceiling was more financial in, the financial ramifications that were going to come from it. But it will forever be a huge Timberwolves what if, this path, the paths that they've gone down, and this path in particular. And it'll be cool to see Carl on Thursday. I know he's probably, for the both of us, the player we've interviewed more than anyone,
Anybody. Yeah, pretty much.
in both of our careers, and was always very accommodating to us in that way. And it'll be a cool, emotional, I'm sure, in ways for him, and we'll see where this thing goes. What are your thoughts, just like briefly to wrap it, like on what that's going to be like on Thursday night?
I think it's going to be a weird night. I mean weird in a good way, if you can say it that way. I mean, it's going to be emotional. It's going to be different. I'm sure there's a big video planned. I'm sure there's going to be a long ovation. I wonder what the actual game is going to look like. I think that could be fun in some ways. Yeah. But obviously, I think, we'll see if the Knicks have shoot around, if Carl will talk at it, what he'll say before the game. I'm sure he'll talk at length afterwards. It's going to be a different night. I think it'll be a well-deserved bow-taking moment for Carl in the 9 years he spent here.
Well put. Coming up on the show, Britt and I are going to go on Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to take some time to, whether tonight or tomorrow morning, to watch a little bit more of the Knicks, and try and we're gonna talk a lot more about the Carl, what we've seen on the floor, with the what he's looked like in New York, as Chris referenced, like, he's playing basketball very differently this year. The stat profile is very differently, the way he's used. Finch was talking about him playing the 5, and how that today at practice, he's like, yeah, it's a cheat code if you can put Cat at the 5. And I was like, yeah, it is. It was. But me and Britt will get into a little bit more of that on Wednesday afternoon, and that'll lead us up to the late game on Thursday night. Chris, I'm really glad we did. This is not obviously what the normal flow of one of our episodes, but I really love the group chat article that was good and necessary, I think, reporting on how this team has moved through that issue at the beginning of the season, and it's always fun to get your perspective on the Wolves on the floor, which you do all the time, but also what you're seeing off the floor. Thank you for coming on.
I appreciate you for highlighting it, and because we appreciate that at the Strib, and sure. I always like to tell people this is what you get for your subscription. This is where that money goes. So you're not subscribing for some nebulous reason. Like that's what we try to do with the resources you give us. So thank you.
It is, I'll just say the last thing to plug that, like, so you interviewed Nikhil, Dante, Mike, Kyle Anderson,
Nas, Rudy,
like, and you conducted those interviews over the course of the entire road. You were in LA. Yeah. And so it is the truth that being able to make those type of stories happen, like, you do need to be around the team all the time, and there's only limited media availability here and there and whatever. Like, Chris can't just be like, "Hey, Wolves,
hey Dante, you got 20 minutes,
9 people,
for 20 minutes each, and I got to do it right now,
exactly,
that's not how this works."
But I mean, just credit to you for putting in the work to that, because I just say, like, before I got into media, like, I didn't get how any of that worked, and I would just say to people listening, like, there's a lot more time that somebody like Chris or John or Jace have to put in to be able to, like, there's work. It takes time and work to get the quotes that that you appreciate, that everybody appreciates reading.
Yeah, it's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing to execute it.
100%. Like, think about how many good ideas we've had, right? And been like, well, don't have time for that.
Don't have time for that, or that sounds impossible to report. So no. So it's that, and being on the road also gives you the space to have one-on-one conversations with these guys. Like when you're able to talk to Dante at practice and it's just me and Dante for 7-8 minutes, like they feel comfortable sharing a little more in those moments. It's a different kind of interaction than at practice here, where they're at the backdrop and there's 3 or 4 cameras around. You got the tripod there.
Tripod, baby. Tripod, baby.
That's right. We have, everybody's here, and it's just a different tone to the interaction. So, that's what the road allows for you in moments like that. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, it's titled "How the Timberwolves Leveraged a Players-Only Group Chat to Get Out of Their Early Season Funk." You can find that at thestartribune.com. You can find Chris on Twitter at Christopher Hine. Actually, I don't know. I was going to say have you back on next week, but that your day is Christmas. So maybe, I don't know.
I'll be on the road. I'm not going to have anything to do probably on Christmas Eve. So if you want to record, I'll be down.
Yeah, the question is going to be what am I going to have to do here for Christmas and stuff?
How much into the eggnog are you going to be at that?
Yeah, that might make for a good episode.
Right?
Eggnog with Chris. No, thank you for doing it. Again, he's Chris. Britt and I will be back on Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, till then, he's Chris. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.